Hey guys, Dan here with this week's TV news and reviews, coming to you from my bedroom. Welcome to it. So with the summer season upon us, and not only that, but Hollywood basically being shut down for a few months due to the coronavirus and such, there are just not that many new shows coming out these days. So rather than the usual like 5 or 6 that I try to get to every week, there's really only going to be probably about 2 or 3 new shows every week for the next little while. Now, Peacock's going to premiere in a few weeks, so I'll have some Peacock shows to review for you, but that's going to be in its own separate video. You know, Peacock, is it worth it, as I've done with all the other major streamers lately. But so starting this week, we're going to do a new category on the show, or a new segment of the show called the Big Binge. And that is, I'm going to review an entire season of a show, or, today's case is just a mini-series, so there is only the 6 episodes. But it may be something I've tackled before on the weekly review show just as the first episode, or, I've seen the first 2 episodes maybe, but I'm going to binge now the whole season, or the whole series if it's a one-seasoner, or like in the case of today's show, something that came out a little bit before the TV news and reviews show even started in September, and that's what we're doing this week. Good Omens is going to be my show for the Big Binge. I watched all 6 episodes of that in the last 2 days, so I am ready to discuss that at length. So I think with the Big Binge, it'll be a little bit more than just the typical like 5 to 7 minute review that I give all the other shows. So this week we have 3 new shows, and then the Big Binge with Good Omens. But first, let's talk about the TV news. Canceled and renewed. We always start there, so let's do it. NBC has canceled Council of Dads. That's no real big surprise. I think they do still have 1 episode left to air, but they keep looking for a hit in the This Is Us vein to replace This Is Us, which This Is Us in turn sort of replaced Parenthood when that got canceled. But last year they tried it with The Village. This year, Council of Dads. Neither show has really just been that good, to be honest. I gave Council of Dads a very middling grade when I reviewed it a couple of months ago. So no big shock there. The only freshman series, by the way, that NBC will be taking into next season is Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. And to be honest, I think it's the only one I gave higher than a C+. Because like Bluff City Law was kind of right on the edge there. Oh, Sunnyside. I liked Sunnyside, but of course that got the axe very, very early. Everything else, I'm trying to think, like Bluff City Law was only okay. Perfect Harmony I didn't grade very well. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist is probably the only one I gave a positive grade to as well. Other than the original episode of Sunnyside that I saw. And also Vagrant Queen canceled over on Sci-Fi. No real surprise there either. The ratings just weren't there for that show. And again, something I didn't really give that positive a grade to begin with. Some of the renewals, actually only one of them I've ever reviewed on this show, and it was not a very positive review, but Lucifer is coming back for a 6th season on Netflix, and that is a surprise to many. They had sort of revived it from the first 3 years on Fox, put up season 4, people enjoyed it. They put up season 5 saying, okay, this will be the last season of Lucifer, but it's not to be. They're going to have a 6th, and now they have said, yes, final season on Lucifer, and the ads for it, at least like over Twitter and stuff, have been pretty funny because, of course, 666, number of the devil, so 6th season, they're sort of having some fun with that over on the Lucifer Twitter. So that's going to be renewed, although season 5, I think, has not even dropped yet because that got halted during the pandemic. So I think they're going to release the first half of season 5 shortly, and then the second half will be dropping probably in 2021, and then maybe season 6 won't be till 2022. I'm not sure. But that has been renewed. Cobra Kai is going on Netflix as well. That had 2 seasons previously on YouTube, but YouTube is moving completely out of the scripted genre and focusing more on things like Red Table Talk and the Steve Harvey Talk Show. So more of the unscripted / reality type stuff, and that's going to be over on YouTube. So they have sold the rights basically to the Cobra Kai show to Netflix, which is really great for me because I don't have YouTube Red or Premium or whatever it is. So Netflix is also going to have the first 2 seasons available of Cobra Kai before putting up the 3rd season. So I think that's very smart. And it could thrive there, and they may give it a 4th or 5th season. I don't know, but I've heard a lot actually about that show. Good things. So I'm excited to watch it. I'm not the biggest Karate Kid fan, but I like the first movie a lot. I don't know if I've ever seen any of the other ones. Maybe the second one when I was little. But I've seen the first one, a few times, 3 or 4 probably. And The Great North on Fox has not even premiered yet. That's going to be coming out in the fall. But that has already been renewed for a 2nd season. Fox really doubling down on their animation prospects because that's one of the few things that they can actually accomplish during the pandemic. The animators can work independently. The voice actors can come in and work independently. You're not shooting in front of an audience, obviously. So animation really for Fox is one of the few things that will be back on the slate in the fall as is. Simpsons, Bob's Burgers, Family Guy, Bless the Hearts, and then mid-season replacement Duncanville is coming back mid-season as well. And actually, it's no surprise to me that they're kind of doubling down on this property, The Great North, before it even premieres, because number one, it's from the Bob's Burgers guys, so they already have a good relationship. But number two, they've already lost a couple of animation shows to other places. Solar Opposites aired on Hulu, and that was originally developed for Fox. And then Central Park, which I reviewed just a couple of weeks ago, to rave reviews. I love this thing. Is over on Apple TV Plus, and that was originally done for Fox as well. So hopefully they don't want another loss in the animation department. So they're hoping The Great North will be a success, giving it 2 seasons before the first one even premieres. That's pretty crazy in this day and age to do for a network. Streamers, yeah, but on a network, maybe not. And then the one that I have reviewed on this show before is Black AF. That comes on Netflix as well. That's going to be renewed for season 2. Critically and fan-wise, it's not gotten an amazing response. Both, like on Rotten Tomatoes, both the critic score and the audience score is not all that high. It's in the 50s, low 60s type range. I did not grade it very highly here. I think it was a B or a C minus rather from me. But look, Kenya Barris has a very, very strong voice right now because, the whole Black Lives Matter thing and people really kind of looking to some of those high-profile black voices. ABC sensed that sea change as well and originally had Blackish on their mid-season slate. And they have now said, oh no, we'll push back our new show till mid-season. Let's put Blackish up in the fall. And I feel like Netflix probably is thinking the same thing because it's hard to tell with Netflix because they don't release, viewership data really unless it's like one of the top tier shows like Stranger Things. So it's hard to tell how many people have watched this show. But yeah, audience-wise, critic-wise, it's not certainly a breakout hit for Netflix, but in keeping with the sort of theme of the day of let's raise up black voices, let's listen to black voices. Black AF is certainly a part of that, and Kenya Barris as a whole, all of his shows, Mixed-ish, Grownish, all give us a perspective that we don't normally see on television. So I think it's good for that respect, and I love those other shows that I mentioned, but Black AF did not do it for me personally, but we will see a season 2 of that. So to piggyback on some of those things, Fox is scrambling to figure out what to do with The Masked Singer because as of now it's the only show that's on their fall lineup that needs to be really produced. A lot of their fall lineup is either going to be, like I said, the animation stuff or a lot of acquired programming. For example, LA's Finest, which aired on the Spectrum Network, which nobody has. They have bought those episodes to run. Makes sense because nobody has Spectrum, so nobody's really seen this show. And then also a lot of the stuff that they were going to air over the summer, they've been holding back for the fall, including Master Chef, I think, the junior version, and then a couple of other shows, like reality shows, they've kept for the fall, and a couple of dramas as well that they were hoping to launch in the summer, but then COVID-19 happened. So, but Masked Singer is still the one thing on their fall schedule that needs to be recorded somehow, and hopefully in front of an audience. That sort of is part of the bread and butter of that show, but they don't know yet. They said, look, we're probably not going to need to film this for a little while, which I think is weird because, I mean, the season that just finished started in January, ended in, I think, April, maybe in May, like early May, but either way, they shot that in 2019. So, well, maybe not the whole thing. Maybe they started filming it in January and then it went through February. Because I guess by the time the last few episodes were airing, the judges would have been able to watch the first couple episodes and look at Twitter and stuff and see what people are thinking for who the celebrities are, which is why their guesses started getting so much better the last, like, 3 or 4 episodes. So I guess maybe they do film shortly before starting. So let's say they don't have to film until September and they want to launch in October. That still gives them 2.5 months to kind of figure out what they want to do. But, truth be told, California is not one of those states that's doing very well right now with the pandemic. So California may close up shop again. It's hard to say right now, but Fox really sort of up in the air on what to do with The Masked Singer. And then the other thing with that is to go back to NBC. They have now moved their sort of pilot season to the fall because, of course, pilot season got shut down. Only one show got to finish its pilot, and that's one that got picked up on CBS. So they do have a couple of commitments for mid-season already on NBC, and that's going to be Young Rock, which is basically the Dwayne Johnson version of Everybody Hates Chris. He's going to narrate it, and it's going to be loosely based on his upbringing. And then you've got The Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I think it's called, with Ted Danson, and that's like the Tina Fey show. And then I can't remember what the third one is, but there's 3 comedies that are already sort of on the schedule for mid-season. But instead of doing the traditional 12 that they had lined up for the fall, or to be recorded in the spring in consideration for the fall, they are now saying, okay, we're going to still do all of these pilots, but we're going to fast track the 5 we think have the most potential, and so those are the ones we're going to focus on to be completed by fall, and the decision made to go to mid-season. One of those is the Night School TV show that they're basing on the Kevin Hart, Tiffany Haddish movie. So that's one of the ones that's going to be fast-tracked. None of the other ones I think were super high profile, but that one definitely is in contention. And then basically what they said was they're going to move the other pilots to be done essentially at next year's pilot season in contention for fall 2021. So I guess a lot of networks are going to follow that model. Some of the shows have been put directly to without a pilot, like directly to the schedule. I think that can be hit or miss. Like, notoriously, I remember when NBC did the Michael J. Fox show, and they ordered an entire season of, I think, like 22 episodes or something. Just because you're Michael J. Fox, you can do what you want. We're not even going to really look at a script. We're not going to look at pilots. It's a little weird because the show ended up being, a huge flop. And really, I watched the first episode. It was horrible. It wasn't funny. But, I would think they're a little leery of doing things like that again, but it's hard to say. So that's, I think, where the pilot season is kind of going to go from here. All right, and other than that, we have some of the Black Lives Matter stuff still to talk about. So it was released about a week ago by this point that Kristen Bell, who voices a character in Central Park, we were just talking about that show, and also Jenny Slate, who voices a black character in Big Mouth, have both stepped down from their roles and said, look, we kind of thought that anybody could voice anybody, but obviously we want to bring the black experience to these characters, the mixed experience in Kristen Bell's case to these characters. And I wouldn't be surprised if they give Kristen Bell something else to do on Central Park. I haven't seen Big Mouth. I know everybody loves that show. But I do think I'm a little torn on that, because I agree that obviously, black voices should be heard, and other ethnicities and stuff. But I feel like in the world of animation, it's just so different, because you have male people voicing female characters and vice versa. You have Bart Simpson voiced by an older woman. You have people on Bob's Burgers, that are women being voiced by men all the time. So I think the world of animation is a little bit different in that regard, but I can appreciate that they want to open the door to at least, different actors with different experiences that they can bring to the voice role. But like, Central Park's kind of all over the place with their family, because the whole family is voiced by many different people and many different ethnicities. Like Titus, they're a mixed family, but like, Titus Burgess voices the son, and obviously he's black, he's not mixed. But that show, again, because it's from the Bob's Burgers people, Stanley Tucci and Daveed Diggs, both men, and Daveed Diggs is a black man, are both voicing white women characters. So, look, to me, I feel like I agree that we have not heard nearly enough diverse voices on television. I think the same could be said for gay people, for physically handicapped people. I think about Superstore, and the guy that plays, what's the character's name? I can't remember. I'm trying to think of his name tag on Superstore. But he is black, but he's in a wheelchair on the show. But he's not in a wheelchair in real life. Same with the kid that played Kevin on Glee. And Love Simon, that lead actor. Well, he's straight. So I don't know. As a gay man, I don't feel like you have to give every gay character to a gay actor. But I do think there's roles for everybody, so I do think they should be a little more diverse in casting. So I don't hate at all the idea of Kristen Bell and Jenny Slate sort of stepping down from their respective roles. But I would like to see them pop up in different places on these shows. Well, Big Mouth I don't watch, like I said, but Central Park, I think every show needs Kristen Bell, whether it's an animated show or not. So give me more Kristen Bell, please. So hopefully they'll find another character for her to voice. And obviously, look, the whole Hank Azaria thing with Apu on The Simpsons, I totally think, yes, that's after watching the documentary about how horrible, some people of that community have felt and have been treated and bullied because of the Apu character, which, of course, I don't think Hank Azaria, is a racist person at all. But, he did this very stereotypical character that has, ramifications that I don't think anybody thought of 30 years ago. But at the same time, look, Simpsons has, Willie, which is very generic and stereotypical, Scottish character. So, I don't know. I think animated series is just sort of a different animal. But I can appreciate that they're stepping down from their roles. And then on the other side of things, giving black voices a role in television that we haven't seen a lot of until recently. We've got two black comedians hosting game shows, and that's ABC's been leading the charge on that. We've got Michael Strahan hosting. Of course, Steve Harvey's been doing Family Feud for years, and then what's it called? To Tell the Truth with Anthony Anderson. So, all of those, have black hosts. And we've got a show with Jay Farrow, formerly of SNL, coming to Nickelodeon later this month, actually, in just a few weeks. It's going to be some sort of guessing game. It's sort of going to be like The Masked Singer, but just they're not going to be singing. But people, I guess, from home will kind of guess over, Zoom or FaceTime or whatever. And play along with Jay Farrow that way and sort of guess who the celebrities are in question. It's a Nickelodeon show, so I don't think the celebrities are going to be, William Shatner or something. I think it's going to be like, oh, this is, Cole Sprouse or something, or somebody from That's So Raven or whatever. But it'll be fun. I mean, sometimes I think that the people on The Masked Singer, it's a great show for families, but like kids don't know who half these people are on The Masked Singer. And then the other one, Lil Rel Howery, is coming back to NBC. He worked there on the Carmichael Show a few summers ago. He's going to be hosting a show called Small Fortune. Don't know when that's going to air. I feel like it's probably going to be next summer, or maybe over Christmas break. Like I feel like those are the only two times NBC really runs game shows. But the name of the show, again, is Small Fortune. Lil Rel Howery is going to do that. And it's sort of a game-based one. From the description, it seems like it's going to be like Ellen's Game of Games, kind of. There's like different challenges, different obstacles. So it's going to be that mixed with maybe a little Wipeout and that kind of thing. So we'll see as more things develop. But the Jay Farrow one is going to be on in a few weeks. It's called Unfiltered, and I'm sure when that premieres, I'll have a nice description of that for you. I always like to review new game shows. In fact, we have two reality/game shows to talk about out of our 3 new shows today. So like I said, summer's a great time for networks to rock their game shows. But let's get started with the reviews. First up, we're going to talk about this show, Perry Mason. This is on HBO, and it's listed as a miniseries. I feel like this is something that if it does well enough can certainly come back and do more episodes. It's going to be an 8-episode series total. They've aired just 2 so far, and I've seen the pilot of it, but it will air on Sundays on HBO through the middle of August. And look, if you know anything about Perry Mason, he's kind of a no-nonsense, detective kind of guy, lawyer, what have you. I never really watched the show growing up. I know about it. I can picture the dude. Raymond Burr, I believe, was the gentleman who played Perry Mason. But, of course, like most things in TV and movies, this stems from a previous work. There was a whole novel series based around the Perry Mason character from way back when. I'm not sure exactly when those came out. Does it say here? Earl Stanley Gardner was the author. Let's see. Perry Mason Detective Stories. When did that come out? Don't know. I know. I hate thinking of things on the fly and then looking them up like an idiot. But, there we go. In his bibliography, oh my goodness, the Perry Mason bibliography. Let's start there. So around the 30s was the first one, which makes sense because this show actually takes place in the 30s as well. The original show took place in present day, which then was mostly the 60s. But this takes place during the Great Depression, 1931, 1932. And basically, while the rest of the world, or at least the U.S., I should say, is under this depression, L.A. is just, loaded for bear. They are having a great time, between the film industry, the oil boom, the Olympic Games were held there that summer. So, look, LA is just having a grand old time. And enter Perry Mason, a private detective who has, a list of problems of his own. He is retained for a child kidnapping that's making all the headlines. And they essentially, the killer basically, sewed up the eyes before killing the kid and stuff. Horrible, very gruesome. We actually see the stitched up kid in like the first or second scene of the show. So they dive you right in here on HBO. Matthew Rhys plays Perry Mason, and you might know him from The Americans. Juliet Rylance plays his secretary, or no, not his secretary, rather the secretary of E.B. Johnson, played by John Lithgow. And then we also have a bunch of names you might recognize or faces. Shea Whigham, Tatiana Maslany, I think is how you pronounce it, from Orphan Black. Justin Kirk from Weeds is in here. So a lot of people you might recognize. But essentially, we start in very late 1931 with episode 1, and it takes us through, I guess, 1932 with the rest of the episodes. I have some mixed feelings about this. First of all, I do love this time period. I've talked about this with a couple of recent shows. We had Hollywood on Netflix, and then we also had the new Penny Dreadful show on Showtime that all sort of centers around like 30s Hollywood, 30s and 40s Hollywood, basically. Um, and this is an era that I love. I really am attached to the storylines that are kept here and the people and the whole Hollywood system and all of that kind of thing. As long as it's like taking place in LA in the 30s or 40s, and is even remotely about the film industry or Hollywood, I'm in. So right there, okay, I like the setting and everything. But I really don't think that this had to be any sort of Perry Mason show. You could have named it anything. You could have named it, Mike Hammer. That was a famous detective from a long time ago. Or, heaven forbid, you make a new character up. Everybody needs name recognition now. You gotta have name recognition. So, okay, well, even though it's got nothing to do really with Perry Mason, let's call it Perry Mason. Now, I will say that from what I understand, the TV show of the 60s was sort of watered down from the novels. The novels were a little grittier, a little pulpier. They were, some of the pulp fiction of the 30s, I guess. And so HBO, in that respect, at least sort of moves a little more in that direction. Obviously, in the 60s in television, you couldn't do hardly anything you get away with on HBO. So I can respect it for that. But I still, to me, it seems like the Joker, where it's like you had this movie that really had nothing to do with the character of the Joker, but they were like, well, we need a name product for this movie, let's call it Joker and have it be sort of about the Joker, even though it's not really at all. Which is just one of my problems with that movie, The Joker. But this is sort of in that same vein. It's like, well, let's call it Perry Mason, even though it could be anybody or no one that you've heard of, and give him a new identity. But okay, whatever. Aside from that, I found it to be a little slow, to be honest. There's going to be 8 hours of this show, and at least the first episode did not quite hook me in the way that I would have liked it to. There's sort of an interesting side story about a Fatty Arbuckle type character and scandal. Fatty Arbuckle, famous, heavy-set comedian of the 20s and 30s that basically lost his career under some rape allegations. They turned out to, I guess, be false, but, it ruined his career, and he ended up, dying very young. And here they have a very, very similar character that they're sort of basing it on, and that was a side story in this episode. I found that to be a little interesting. But the main story, they don't really dive into quite yet. John Lithgow, for example, is in this first episode very minimally, yet I think, if I'm following the story right, I feel like he would have a pretty big stake in the remaining episodes. I don't know. But so far, I'm not quite attached to anything. I think people are giving good performances. I didn't watch The Americans. It's on my list to watch. But Matthew Rhys, can act, certainly. And, there's a lot of people in this show that I've, seen before and enjoy, just sort of, oh, that guy kind of thing. So the acting's okay. I found it to be very slow, and I'm not quite sure if 8 episodes is what we need for this. But I also I don't know, like the character of Perry Mason, I understand it was watered down a little bit for the 60s TV show, but even sort of the morals of the character. Now, again, I've never watched the show, but from everything I understand, like Perry Mason was always just kind of a stand-up guy, very moral, gotta get my man kind of thing. And, of course, we're in 2020 now, so everything's got to be gritty, everything's got to be over the top. And HBO, of course, always sort of goes to the mat for those types of ideals. And so here we have a Perry Mason that has a lot of issues, and perhaps it does go more closely to the novels. I don't know. But point being, I don't think it needed to really even be a Perry Mason show. I think it could just be anything, and they just slapped on the name. So I don't know. I'm going to leave Perry Mason with a B-. It was okay. It did not interest me that much into watching the other 7 episodes. Will I stick with it? Yeah, maybe I'll do a binge on it. Maybe I'll make it my big binge one week once it's all wrapped. I don't know. But it wasn't something that I'm really thinking about. I mean, I watched it about 2 days ago, and I haven't really given it much thought since, to be completely honest. Up next, we're going to talk about a couple of game shows or reality contest shows, if you will. The first one's going to be on Netflix, and that is The Floor is Lava. This show has been, no pun intended, but on fire. It's been #1 on Netflix, top 10 of the day for a couple of weeks, really since it debuted. And it is hard to stay up there because Netflix just releases things every week. Even the Will Ferrell movie, Eurovision, that everybody's talking about, could not take Floor is Lava out of the #1 spot. So this is a game show based pretty much on the game, like the app game of the same name. I don't know if it's related specifically to the app or not, but it's a game involving 3 people on your team, either family members or they do 3 different teams in each episode. And the first team in this episode that I saw was a mother and her 2 kids. Second one was coworkers, and the third one was triplets. So you don't have to be family, but I guess it helps maybe if you are. Basically, they have all 3 teams separate of each other and not knowing how the other teams did run through the same obstacle course. And just like if you've ever played the game The Floor is Lava, even not the app game, but just like you and your friends, like, oh, you can't touch the floor is lava, you're gonna die. It's that same concept, and there's different obstacles that you have to figure out how to get around so that you're not touching the floor or falling into the floor. And then essentially, any team that gets all 3 members to the other side without losing one will be in sort of pole position. If you lose one, okay, you're still maybe in it. But basically, whoever can get the most members over and in the shortest amount of time is going to be declared the winner of the episode. To me, this is okay. I like the concept. I mean, I like these types of shows. We've been doing a lot of them here on the review show. We've reviewed Game On. We reviewed Don't. We reviewed Ultimate Tag. They all sort of follow the same concept of physical athleticism to try and solve something. And here it's a little escape roomy, I guess. I mean, to me, the best of the bunch, well, of those ones I just mentioned is Don't, I would say. But the one I reviewed on Nickelodeon from a few months ago, where they have a lot of different types of games and contests, is my favorite. This one is a lot like Ultimate Tag in the respect that it's just repetitive. You're watching the same course be done 3 different ways. And it's a 40-minute show. I think you could have either pared it down to a half hour or made it an hour maybe and done 2 different courses throughout the hour. I think 40 minutes to watch the same course be done 3 times by 3 different people, it just is a little bit repetitive, and it's interesting to see how different people utilize different objects in the room, but certain things, it's like there's only really one way to get across, so it's like they all have to kind of figure that out. Still, you're watching them figure it out and stuff. But to me, I thought this was actually rather boring. And not only that, the announcer they have is super annoying. We talked last week about Ryan Reynolds doing the voiceover for the game show Don't on ABC, and either you love Ryan Reynolds or you don't like him. I personally love him. I think he's very funny. I love, the deadpan sort of humor that he does. It's in the same vein as like a Jason Bateman. But here it's like, I don't know, this guy is trying to be very like corny, but also, I don't know, like he seems full of himself. Like, I did not care for the announcer. The teams are okay. The teams, they are having fun with each other and stuff, and I like sort of the camaraderie between them. So they pick good teams, I'll give them that, but just very repetitive, and I understand that each course gets done twice in this season. I think there's 10 episodes for the season, and there's 5 different courses, so each course will get done twice, which means, I don't know if they're going to make it different the second time, but this was, I think, the bedroom course. I can't remember what the first course was. Let me look now. I should get the name of the guy too, just so I'm not just talking smack on somebody I don't know. Rutledge Wood is the name of the guy, and he was. Oh, he hosted Top Gear. All right, well, I don't watch Top Gear. Maybe he's better on Top Gear. The basement. Okay, so the bedroom is episode 2, and they're called like level 1 and level 2. So like the bedroom will come back in episode 9. The basement comes back in episode 8. But is it going to be set up the same? I would hope not. But, even still, I don't know. So I thought this was rather generic and a bit boring just because they're just doing the same thing. So I leave Floor is Lava with a C-. Up next is Karma. This is on HBO Max. And HBO Max still doing that sort of thing where they're going to put some episodes up and then do it weekly, or they're going to put all episodes up at once. They're sort of determining it by the show itself. And for this one, they've decided to put all of the episodes up at once. I think there's 8 episodes. Let me look. Yeah. And it is executive produced and co-created by J.D. Roth, who I remember from middle school, maybe high school. He hosted the show called Funhouse, which was great. So fun for kids. I was like 11 or 12 when it came out. Loved it. And it was a lot like actually a lot of these shows I'm talking about, Don't and Game On and stuff like that. There were physical contests. There were also some trivia involved, I think, but you had to like go all through the fun house and pick different things and stuff. And all right, that was, I guess, a little repetitive because the Funhouse was largely the same every episode, but they hid things in different places and stuff, so made it a little more interesting. But anyway, so J.D. Roth does not host this. He doesn't, you're not seeing him on screen at all, but he co-created it and is the main producer, so love that. And Michelle Kerr, I believe is how you would pronounce it, is the host of this. She really is not much of a known person. She has a YouTube show and she's been an actor in a few things, but for the most part she's kind of a newbie to the game. But this is basically a kids version of Survivor. There's kids ranging from, I think the youngest is 13 and the oldest is 15. So they're all like young teenagers, I would say 8th grade to maybe 9th or 10th. And it's basically, X number of boys, X number of girls. I think, I think it starts with 18 total, and then the first episode, 1 boy and 1 girl get kicked off, actually in the middle of the first episode. But basically it's very Survivor-esque. There's, some physical challenges. There's likely going to be some mental challenges, and we've already seen some mental head games in the first episode, because the winner of one of the physical contests got to then pick who the teams are for the remainder of the series. And so people would, plead their case. Oh, please don't put me with this person, or please put me with this person. And this dude, I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's very interesting. I like these kind of shows. I used to love Survivor when it first came on. I haven't seen it in a long, long time, but I used to love it. I used to watch it every season for the first 3 or 4 or 5 years maybe. And this is a lot like that, both in gameplay and in look. I mean, it's shot like Survivor. It acts like Survivor. And I think in many respects it's as interesting as Survivor, because I think just having kids involved gives it a whole different dynamic. Because look, adults like to screw each other over. It's part of the game. It's part and parcel of any of these adult reality contests. But kids not only are a little more, I don't know if pure is the right word, but, they're not as incensed to the world yet. They want to see the good in other people for the most part. So not only is that just, I think, inherent in kids more than adults, but this show is all about karma. So it's sort of a head game of, okay, well, if I screw this person over, is that going to come back on me in another challenge? Or, and of course the producers are seeing everything. And since this is the first time, these kids don't really know if things are going to come back to them or not based on what the producers are seeing. It's almost like that first season of Survivor where you really just, and of course Survivor was the first of its kind, really, so you really didn't know what was going to happen. I love that first season of Survivor. But yeah, it's not quite that because of course now we have Survivor and 8 other shows that sort of mimic it. But I definitely think the whole karma theme is something new and something interesting, and I think they've picked a really good diverse group of kids. Some of them are definitely more athletic, and others are definitely more on the smarter scale. They'll do better maybe at more of the mental gymnastics. And it's sort of all backgrounds, and they had a cute little powwow at the beginning to kind of get to know each other. What else did I write down? Oh, okay. I will say this about this. The prize money is kind of a joke. To kids, it's a lot of money, but I mean, to me, it's a lot of money too. But the prize money is $50,000, which, great. Give me 50 grand, cool. But like, I don't know. Survivor gives away $1 million. I don't know what The Amazing Race gives away. That might be $1 million too. I think they could have given these kids at least $100,000 or something, or maybe $50,000 in cash and $50,000 in a scholarship for their university of choice, or something like that. So I think the prize money's a little chintzy, to be honest. You're on HBO, for God's sake. But yeah, I like this show overall. I think it's very interesting, and it's pretty cool that HBO Max put up all 8 episodes. So if you do want to binge it, and really get to know these kids all at once, not such a bad idea. So I'm going to leave Karma with a B+. So finally, we have the Big Binge, and this week that is Good Omens. This is a show that I did not review when it first came out because it came out in May and my show didn't start until September. We did go back in time and do a few of the earlier shows, like around Christmas time when there were no new shows going up on the channels, but for some reason this was not one of the ones I went through. And this is created by Neil Gaiman, and it's part of his whole Good Omens package, because he wrote the book about it along with Terry Pratchett, who has passed away. So unfortunately, he's not involved in this iteration of Good Omens. But Neil Gaiman, created this version and actually has written all 6 of the episodes. And this is listed as a miniseries, so hopefully 6 episodes and we're out. Douglas McKinnon directed all 6 of the episodes too. So all 6 episodes really do have a running focus and a running, I don't like when we have an 8-episode miniseries and it's like there's 4 different directors and 5 different writers, and it's like, no. Like, I like to see things that are the same all the way through. And sometimes it works, sometimes people bring different things to the table and stuff, but look, it's based on this guy's work. So it makes sense that he would also write all 6 of the episodes, and then Douglas McKinnon to direct all 6 episodes. So essentially, like I said up front, the Big Binge, I'm going to take more than just the typical 5 to 7 minutes that I do on the review show, because I've spent 6 hours watching this show, so I'm going to talk about it for at least 10 or 12, right? But it's set in the present day, which in the film is 2018. The novel was written in the 90s, so I assume that took place in the 90s, but I'm not positive. But anyway, it follows basically Mr. Crowley, the demon, and Azrael, the angel, and those are played by David Tennant and Michael Sheen, respectively. And they're basically, longtime, lifetime friends on Earth, and represent, of course, heaven and hell. Heaven for Azrael and hell for Crowley, and basically they need to stop the coming of the Antichrist, and with it would come Armageddon, in a final battle of heaven and hell. And they've both been around since the Garden of Eden days, as we find out in their background. Azrael, he was basically tasked with guarding the Garden of Eden with his big flaming sword, which has a lot of context in this show. They keep referring to it and how he lost it and gave it to a mortal, and he keeps getting crap about it for that. And then Crowley's been around since those days as well. He's basically the serpent who tempted Eve, with the apple from the Garden of Eden. So, long history with these two, both, on Earth and with each other. Their sort of love-hate relationship that we get to know. And this is a very funny show. It actually intrigues me to read the book, because I wonder if the book is so humorous. But these guys play great off each other. I didn't watch Doctor Who, so I know who David Tennant is, but I don't know if I've seen a whole lot of his stuff. Michael Sheen I've seen in a ton of things. We just reviewed one of his recent shows, Quiz, a couple of weeks ago, which I loved. I thought he was great as the game show host. But here we've also got, a lot of other familiar faces. John Hamm plays Gabriel, who is, basically the leader of heaven. And he, from what I understand, was not really in the novel very much at all. And Neil Gaiman's, idea, I hope I'm saying that right, Gaiman or Gaiman, I don't know, but I don't know if I've ever heard it spoken. I've only seen it in print. But anyway, in the original novel, he was in it very, very infrequently, the Angel Gabriel. But there was supposed to be, sequel novels and spin-offs that were going to include him a lot more. And so, in the writing of this miniseries, Neil Gaiman put a lot of the Archangel in here sort of to make up for some of these ideas he never got to put down on paper, which I think is great because, my God, John Hamm is great in just about everything. He never ages. He looks the same as he did 15 years ago. And then you've got the voice of God, which is, I tried the first couple episodes to see if I could figure it out, and I couldn't. I had to look it up, but I knew it was somebody I knew, and it is in fact Frances McDormand. So she does a great job as the voiceover, the narrator. But Michael McKean is here as well. Muriel Enos, who's been in a lot of movies. Brian Cox. So we see a lot of people. Even Benedict Cumberbatch makes a little bit of an appearance as Satan for a little bit. So a lot of fun there. Let me see what I wrote down. I don't want to forget anything. I wrote down some things. Okay, so basically over the 6 episodes, we have a lot of sort of infighting between the two leads. There is amazing chemistry between these two guys. Like I said, David Tennant, I'm not real familiar with. Michael Sheen can do just about anything as far as I'm concerned. He can do drama, he can do comedy. I don't know if we've seen him do horror yet, but I wouldn't rule that out either. But he is great here, and their sort of bickering and interplay is wonderful. The show really, even more than the Apocalypse stuff and the Antichrist stuff, is about their friendship. It's about these two guys and their lives. Now, as a result, that has a couple of negative consequences on the series. Number one is we don't really get to know much about all the supporting characters because it is so focused on these two guys, which I love their interplay and I love their story, but we have people sort of weaving in and out of the story without a ton of context. And thankfully McDormand as the narrator gives us some context to some people, but it's nothing that we really see on screen. And in that respect, if Neil wanted to kind of put more of John Hamm in there, for example, as the Archangel Gabriel, they could have done more episodes of this to... I know that every miniseries that comes up, I'm always like, it's either too many episodes or not enough episodes. Oh, get the number right. But it is true. Like, in this day and age, you don't have to have a certain number of hours or a certain number of episodes. I feel like do whatever works the best for the material. And here, there's so much going on, and it's so scattered that I think maybe another episode or two of context would have helped. Nobody likes to do odd-numbered episodes. It's always either 6, 8, or 10, right? But I don't know. They could have done a 7th episode of Good Omens and maybe, fleshed out some of the ancillary characters a little bit. But the other thing it does with everything going on that gives it a negative is that it time hops constantly. Now, there are cute little animated signs that come up that largely will tell us how many hours or days till the apocalypse. And so those signs will also tell us about other things, where we are in history in this particular scene or whatever. But in wanting to give us a great background on the two main characters, the thing time hops all over the place, and it is definitely a little bit hard to follow, harder than I would have liked for it to follow. But also, the theme is great. I was just thinking the other day that kids today don't really know theme songs because the Friends theme and the Jeffersons and all that. But But most of these shows on the streamers do have credits because it's like there's no commercial breaks, there's no time constraints. So this one does have a really cool title sequence. However, it's placed so oddly sometimes. In episode 3, for example, it doesn't come up until 28 minutes into the episode. The episode is exactly half over because it's like 56, 57 minutes. The episode's exactly half over, and they finally start running opening credits. I had to pause because I was like, wait, the episode can't be over already, because I thought it was maybe the ending credits and I was confused. But, so I thought that was a little bit oddly placed to put it 28 minutes into the episode. But, not that it's a huge negative, just something that I thought to write down. But yeah, I like the animated signs. The soundtrack, yes. Okay, so I don't know what the connection is between Neil Gaiman and Queen. I don't know if, maybe he's buddies with Brian May or was buddies with Freddie Mercury or whatever, but the entire soundtrack pretty much is made up of Queen songs, and it's people listening to Queen on the radio. It's sometimes over top of scenes, but a lot of times it's people listening to Queen, and we, the audience, hear it. I thought that was showcased very, very well. I thought it really added a lot to the story. And what's kind of interesting is it really is a Queen greatest hits. I mean, every song they use is appropriate for whatever theme they're going with in that episode or that particular scene. But like, for example, like the one they bring this girl home that has a bicycle, and they listen to Bicycle Race. Bohemian Rhapsody appears. Another one, Bites the Dust. That, of course, is very, iconic for a death scene. So you've got that. You've got, We Are the Champions. It's You're My Best Friend. All of the songs are placed well, and it just runs like a Queen greatest hits. It really does. I like the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, but I would say this movie utilizes Queen songs even better, because in Bohemian Rhapsody it was like, oh, here's how we came up with this song, and then they would play the song. Here, look, Bohemian Rhapsody I love because Rami Malek did a great Freddie Mercury, and obviously the music is amazing, and the performances at Live Aid at the end are, astounding. So great how that was recreated and shot. But narratively, I've got a lot of problems with Bohemian Rhapsody, the movie. Narratively, there's some problems here for sure, but I think the Queen music is utilized better in this than in Queen's own movie. So overall, I really, really liked this. I don't think we'll get another season of it. I think, and we shouldn't. I think it should stay as just a 6-part miniseries. I do think the ending is very odd because it kind of ends about 40 minutes into the last episode. Everything sort of wraps up, and then they want to give us a whole bunch of like tying up loose ends for the other characters. But again, like, we didn't even really get to know a lot of those other characters very well. So I think it's odd that they felt they all needed their loose ends tied up. I thought that was a little bit odd as well. So, either give us that 7th episode to flesh out some of the characters, and then I'll care more. But, like, about 40 minutes into that last episode, I was like, wow, that really wrapped up great, And then it kept going and going and going, because I was like, oh, right, that character. Oh, yeah, I guess they got to tell us about this character. But it's like, but I wasn't really wondering, because it really is the story of, the two main characters, the angel and the devil character. So, but overall, I really enjoyed this. I leave Good Omens with a B+, and you can find that on Amazon Prime, I believe it is. So that's it. Next week we will have some more new stuff for you. Again, I don't know how many shows are even coming out every week anymore. Probably just 2 or 3. And I'm actually getting this up about 4 days later than I should have. So I'll try to have another one up for you in about 5 days to really get back on the right schedule and swing of things. But I will have another big binge for you next week as well. Not sure what that will be yet. I have a couple of ideas though that hopefully will be pretty cool. But other than that, we've got Cinderella up for Dan Does Disney. We have 2 Food Fanatics videos coming. The first of those is going to be put up on Saturday. Joe and I went over the summer flavors of new chips. We've got some Hershey potato chips in one video and Pringles chips in another. So we're going to talk about those. And then movie reviews. Speaking of that Will Ferrell movie on Netflix, I just mentioned that The Floor is Lava could not give up the number one spot for. Eurovision is the name of the movie. I'm going to watch that and have some other. I think next week I'm going to do all Netflix movies for my movie reviews. That seems to be every like 2 or 3 weeks. I just give a whole show to Netflix because they do so many movies every freaking week. But that's it for our TV news and reviews. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you back here next time. Bye.